I'd just like to welcome along His Worship the Mayor, Councillor Martin, Dr. Dizell. I see you've dressed for the occasion. You're flash now, so I have to greet you. Past President Lyle DeLaw. Welcome everybody along to this unveiling tonight. Many of you are well aware of the gun here, and I believe many of you probably played on it when you were kids. It was part of the hall that used to be here.
I did.
The structure here was built a few years ago by the residents of the area, and the gun was placed inside. Unfortunately, over the years, the weather got to it, and it needed a bit of TLC, it's tender loving care in military parlance. It got talked about for a long time, and eventually somebody put their hand up and said he was going to do something about it. So I'm going to hand over to Donald Hibbs now.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, welcome everyone, and all the notables that he's mentioned. I won't go through that again. So yeah, you're right. This gun's been sitting here for a long time. It's brought out in the 20s, and was originally, I'm pretty sure, originally in front of the hall itself, and then moved later on. But anyway, today is also the 176th anniversary of the New Zealand Army, which is fitting. This gun is, it's here because of the efforts of soldiers. So New Zealand soldiers served with distinction in major conflicts in the 20th century, including the Second Boer War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Malayan Emergency, Borneo Confrontation, and the Vietnam War. Since the 1970s, deployments have tended to be assistance to multinational peacekeeping efforts. Considering the small size of the force, operational commitments have remained high since the start of the East Timor deployment in 1999. New Zealand personnel have also served in the First Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, as well as the UN, and other peacekeeping missions, including the Regional Assistance Mission to Solomon Islands, Sinai, South Sudan, and Sudan. So, I served in the New Zealand Army for 6.5 years, and in that time I spent a year and a half overseas on operations in Sinai and East Timor. The New Zealand Army has been a great avenue for coasters to get out of town and go overseas and learn a trade. So it's a good thing, and I hope it continues. Right, firstly, before I give you some background on this gun, I'd like to thank the many people in business that have made the project possible. Henry Adams Contracting for moving the guns to West Roads and back here today, about 4 hours ago. And it was a lot more difficult than what we thought, actually. Anyway, we've made it. West Roads for letting us use the yard, so we did the blasting and the painting over there. Warren from Soda Blast West Coast, he's done a great job, as you'll see shortly. Graham Wallace did a great job making this shelter a lot better than it was. We had to cover on the sides because the erosion damage or the wear on the gun was a lot worse from the southwest, where the prevailing weather comes from. So we made the call to cover it in to give it more protection. McMullen ITM for supplying materials needed for the shelter. Coverdale Kelly for design work, and that ties the gun in with all that design work over in the other hut over there as well. And Dave Healy for the sign that he's made. Hakatika Western RSA for entrusting this project to me and for acknowledging the importance of this gun, which is a memorial in its own right. Veterans Affairs, the West Coast Community Trust, and Hakatika Western RSA for their financial support. As a return service person, I'm entitled to claim for grants for things, and I thought this is quite a good thing to claim for, so I use that, which is a good thing. And of course, special thanks go to Richard Garden, who can't be here today. He's having an operation, but some 40 years ago, he took it on himself, and I'm sure team other helpers to get it in here undercover and restore it. And I think if they didn't do that 40 years ago, then there'd probably be a lot less than what's here, because it was sitting out in the rain for 60 years and spent the last 40 years covered. Right, so what is a Kaniere gun and where did it come from? That's the main questions I wanted to know. So why is it even here and where did it come from? So this gun is a 1918 howitzer field gun, captured in France on the Battle of Kaniere-Hindenburg Line during the 100-day offensive by the Otago Regiment, New Zealand Division on 28 September 1918. This was the beginning of the end for Germany, and just over a month later the war ended with unconditional surrender on 11 November 1918. While I've not been able to trace any Westlanders directly from this particular battle, we have had soldiers that were in the Kaniere and Otago Regiment, and of the 62 Western soldiers killed in France, 23 of them were killed as part of the 100-day offensive, so part of this battle and the battles that were around it. Right, what else we got here? One of the interesting things I found out about this gun was it wasn't the only gun we had. So when I was trying to figure out what was going on here, turns out that we had two guns earlier, and they were smaller guns. They were 77mm, which is a field gun, and those were actually outside of Seton House, flanking the Seton statue and those gardens that are there now. And for some reason they got dispersed back in the 30s. Won't go into great detail there. Mr. Butt's back. With a black mark on the RSA, but anyway, those were there, and I think one of the reasons that this gun ended out here was because when this gun came to town, they already had two out front of the Seton House. They had the cenotaph was being planned for the Kaniere, and the bore gun was also Kaniere, and I think it just made sense to bring it somewhere else, and they brought it to Kaniere. So that's how it ended up here. For me, I've been working on this since 2017, and I found it. I was going round in circles, and it wasn't until we had COVID last year that I had enough time to slow down, have a really good deep look at things, and sort of work it all out. And from there, it's all panned out, which is, it's an interesting way things work out. But that's how it's happened. But the information for this gun has been very difficult from the start. It sent me on a lot of dead ends. But we worked it out in the end, and the battle history itself only come to light very recently. In fact, we didn't even have enough time to get the information on the panel, so we've got a QR code on there for the actual battle history itself. So I'll give you a brief description of the battle that it was captured in, fairly brief. So September 28, 1918, it was the second day of fighting, and New Zealand Division had 1st Canterbury and 2nd Otago companies to the right flank, attack at 0330. It was a misty morning, but by 4:30 AM, both assaulting companies have pressed over the crest of Welsh Ridge, stamping out any resistance. As the light cleared, machine guns from the village of Lavackery, not yet cleared by 1st Canterbury, and from the Bovis trenches beyond rendered progress in the open much more difficult. Strong bombing parties worked down the infinite maze of trenches and the Hindenburg line to the sunken road in Valkyrie Valley, where touch was gained with the 1st Brigade on their left. Fire from the other flank, where for the moment nothing could be seen of 1st Canterbury, was becoming heavy and causing casualties. In spite of this, both companies pressed up the Bonavista slopes to within 400 yards of the crest. The 1st Brigade on the left were making unchecked progress, but the German machine guns on the right were now in Otago's rear. The advance was therefore temporarily suspended till reinforcements could strengthen the right flank. About 11 AM, the support company thrown forward for this purpose had arrived, and the two assaulting companies, thus protected, fought their way on top of the Bonavista Ridge. One company, shortly after taking two abandoned 72mm guns, which is a gun about this big field gun, were held up by heavy machine gun fire. Sergeant R.B. Foote, without previous training in gunnery, turned the captured field pieces on the hostiles post and drove the German garrison back with their own guns over the ridge. By 1 PM, 2nd Otago cleared the summit and held the important Royal Trench of the Cumbria Road overlooking the canal. Patrols pushed down the forward slopes to the outskirts of Lato Wood, but were met by intense machine gun fire, and for the moment no further progress was possible. 2nd Otago had taken nearly 600 prisoners, with 30 officers, together with 4 field guns, smaller guns, a howitzer, this one here, 2 trench mortars, and 30 machine guns. And that, in a nutshell, is why this piece of gear behind us is so important. And that's all I got.
Hey, very good. Your worship, would you like to say a few words, please?
Well, I think Kaniere is becoming the centre of the universe, as I was told a few minutes ago. So that's great. Don, every project that actually gets there in the end has got someone driving it. And the RSA's been in the background, but the reality is that you've driven it. You've researched it, you've sandblasted it, you've painted it, you've relocated it, you've harassed every poor business in the place to become part of it, and he's done an absolutely brilliant job. So I'd like you to put your hands together for Don Hibbs, because and this area here has gone from being somewhere you park your car and have a beer on a Friday night to one where people are coming and stopping, cyclists are stopping all the time, and Beryl Agnew and her team that have developed the history stand over there, I quite often come and just have a look at it, because it really is fantastic. And if you look at this area, our cycleway at the moment, the West Coast Wilderness Trail, 20,000 people come through it last year. We're going to get it so that it comes along here, somewhere in this area, and goes across to the hotel side of the road. So it's going to be relocated in so that people can come in and come into here on their bikes, stop, have a look, and be part of, because I believe this area is growing. Not just because I live here, but Kaniere itself is growing, and there's so much history here. I didn't realise until Beryl and her team started to produce the stuff that's in the shed over there, just how much history there was. It's fantastic. So finally, I'd like to acknowledge the RSA team here. You're a big part of everything we do. It's the reality. And the freedoms that we have are largely attributed to what happened in World War I and World War II, and in the Korean War, where people lost their lives and never came home. So really acknowledge you guys. It's it's not something I've ever been involved in. My father was, but it's really special. So great turnout here tonight. Thank you so much for turning up, and I can only compliment you, Don. I think you're friggin', when it comes to basketball and netball and all these other things, you just drive it and you seem to get results. I think you're brilliant. Have you ever thought of sitting for council? Would a lot
It seems to me that something's missing out of the middle there. There is a certain window gathering dust somewhere. Hey, Beryl. Just ask everyone to be upstanding. Mr. Owen.
Not will weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Unless we forget. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Ta-da.
Oh.
Well, you're welcome to come and have a look, and just watch out, some of this paint's a little bit sticky.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. After you've had a look, feel free to go over to that building over there. What are they called again? Pubs, yeah. There's a little bit of food there, and you can talk to the bar manager about buying a beer if you wish. Come forward, feel free.